Let them be for signs, messages from the stars. This is part 1, true interpretation. There are 3 parts, and I think we have to know what the Word of God tells us concerning signs in the skies. Part 1, true interpretation. Since the third dimension was first projected, the one who created it gave clues, signs, and messages for the creatures that populated the hologram, the souls incarnated into different species, whether of Homo sapiens or another form, in the formation and movement of the stars, planets, moons, and suns of the heavens that they could see, read, understand, and appreciate Him and His creation. These messages were and still are the rules of the board game, made easy with the increase of knowledge and truth from generation to generation and from incarnation to incarnation, before the advent on planet Earth of what is called today the New Dispensation. The people that inhabited the old pre-flood and post-flood worlds were more led by the stars than we of this day and age. They, the stargazers of the old world, allowed their knowledge of the stars to be carried forward by those who learned from them into the new dispensation and the new world. However, because of the presence also upon earth of other creatures and other incarnations that do not have the well-being of earth and the life upon her in her hearts, but only that of their own, the art or science of reading and understanding the messages, portents, and signs of the stars became something of exclusivity. The reason for this is that some of those who could read the stars were afraid that their knowledge would become something common and available to the man on the street, quote unquote, while others of their kind wanted to use this knowledge for their own sly agendas in order to deceive the man on the street. There are much more to be said about these messages and signs from the stars and various ways in which they had and could be interpreted. What I'm going to point out in this article is one such example of interpretation and a deliberate misinterpretation of star messages that announced the birth of one person on Earth that would have an enormous influence upon the history of the world for 2,000 plus years. Now, the Regulus, the king star, Regulus is known as the ruler of the lawgiver or the lawgiver. In the dictionary, regulate means to make regular, put in good order, adjust by rule. As a brightest star in the constellation of Leo, Regulus has been almost universally associated in ancient cultures with the concept of royalty and kingly power. The name Regulus comes from the Latin rex, meaning king. The star was known in the older cultures as the cultures of the Akkadians, Hindus, Arabians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans as the king of the heavens or the heart of the lion. Regulus is one of the 4 royal stars of the heavens, and the other 3 being Aldebaran in the constellation of Taurus, the eastern royal star. Antares is the constellation of Scorpio, the western royal star. Fomalhaut is the constellation of Pisces, the southern royal star, and Regulus in the constellation of Leo, the northern royal star. These 4 royal stars are considered to be sentinels watching over other stars and form a fixed cross configuration in the heavens to which a hidden has been attributed. Characteristics of the one who was crucified on the cross. This is outstandingly the cross of the soul. The person who is upon the fixed cross is becoming increasingly aware of its direction and influences as does not respond as blindly as others who have not yet mounted the cross. One does not mount this cross of right direction until they have attained some measure of soul contact and have had some touch of illumination and of spiritual intuition, no matter how fleeting that touch may have been. It is the cross of fixed vision and of that immovable intent which draws one from the points of light to blazing solar radiance. The person upon the fixed cross says, I am the soul, and here I stand. Naught shall remove me from off the narrow place whereon I stand. I face the light, I am the light, and in that light shall I see light. It is a cross whose four energies blend with and transmit the energies of the solar system itself. And this it can do because the person upon the fixed cross is becoming increasingly conscious of issues which are larger than their own self, more engrossing than their previous interests, and those which concern humanity and its relation to solar forces and not just planetary forces. One is becoming sensitive to the larger whole. The energies of this cross continue to evoke response until the time of the third initiation, the transfiguration. It's called the fixed cross because one is stretched upon it by the directed choice and immovable intent of one's soul. From that decision, there is no turning back. Regulus lies at the base of the sickle of Leo, resembling the reversed question mark. Esoterically, a sickle is used to cut out or cut down that which hinders the application of spiritual law, and so hinders the flowering of the soul. To modern sky watchers, this sickle outlines the majestic head and mane of the great westward-facing lion, crouched in the regal position of the king of the forest. Regulus is only half a degree from the ecliptic, and it happens that either the moon or one of the other bright planets pass close to Regulus, infrequently occulting it. Regulus lies in the heart of the lion, which in esoteric language refers to the heart of the Christ consciousness, which is the soul and therefore synonymous with love. Prophecy from the ageless wisdom teachings, a certain relationship or configuration of stars, of which one is the star Regulus in Leo, will bring about a situation where the reorientation of the attitude of the legal profession will take place. Its functions and duties will be centralized for the purpose of the world usefulness, and in this process, legislation for children will assume great importance and be the motivating power. Astronomical signs heralding the birth of a king. Speculator astronomical signs happen in the 18 months of May 3 BC to December 2 BC that would have caused wonderful interpretations by astrologers on behalf of Augustus and the Roman Empire, as well as the Magi of biblical fame, focused on Judea and not Rome at this crucial time in history. The New Testament says the Magi saw the star rising in the east, and therefore it would most naturally have been called the morning star, referring to a celestial body that was well known and recognized in the first century. During this time, the world was engrossed with symbolic concepts such as the rising of a star or planet just before sunrise, which would particularly have been seen as something significant in interpreting events relating to important people. With this in mind, allow me to refer to an event that happened in the morning of August 12, 3 BC, about an hour and 20 minutes before sunrise. Jupiter rose as a morning star in conjunction with Venus, who was then in the constellation of Leo. How would astrologers or magi have interpreted this union? Since Jupiter was called the king planet because it was often associated with the birth of kings, it was also astrologically known as the father of the gods. So as the planet Jupiter left its vicinity near the sun and conjoined with Venus on this day, this could have been an indication of something important. For to the Chaldean and Persian magi, Venus was Ishtar, the goddess of fertility. Thus Jupiter, the father, in conjunction with Venus, the mother and goddess of fertility, could have signified to astrologers that something of great importance was imminent. 20 days later, Mercury, the messenger of the gods, left its position with the sun and stationed itself in close conjunction with Venus, also in the constellation of Leo. These primary planet clustering in Leo, while Jupiter and Venus were now in close union, might very well reflect prophetic significance. According to that great book of Jewish and New Testament history, The lion was a symbol of the tribe of Judah, and the constellation of Leo also appears in the Hebrew zodiac. The association of Leo with Judah arose from the fact that Leo was Judah's natal sign. In the Bible, there are frequent allusions to this connection between Leo and the tribe of Judah. Hence, we read, Judah is the lion's whelp and the lion of the tribe of Judah, end quote. This is by Olcott. Now, it would not be wrong to conclude that these interesting astral relationships that occurred on this early August day could well have signified to astrologers that some important royal event was soon to happen in the Jewish nation. As it was written by the prophets of old, quote, Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee, unquote. And following these initial planetary conjunctions, Jupiter then moved on to unite with the star Regulus September 4th, 3 BC, and 2 more times over the following 8-month period in that same year. And this makes for an interesting relationship that developed between Jupiter, the king planet, and Regulus, the king star. It was as if Jupiter were homing in on Regulus and directing earthly attention to it. Of all the stars in the heavens, the ancient astrologers universally associate Regulus with attributes of greatness and power, and it's located particularly on the ecliptic, and it was thought that this position made it of special importance to the sun. According to astrologers, the sun ruled the heavens, and thus the major star closest to the ecliptic of the ruling sun was Regulus. This close relationship made Regulus a royal star, the one most associated with the conception of birth of kings, the star denoting rulership. In this regard, it will be good to recall the words of one of the older prophets, Balaam. They said that the star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion. Judah is a lion's whelp. He couched as a lion, and the scepter shall not depart from Judah until Shiloh come. End quote. The only star in the heavens that fits this combination of factors mentioned above is the star Regulus, the king star. Regulus is located directly between the feet of the lion and the constellation of Leo. The great Jewish leader Moses even prophesied that Judah, the lion, would have a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes, end quote. Shiloh is a reference to the future Messiah, and also according to the Jewish expectation of the coming Messiah, the star Regulus fits the bill perfectly. After his 3 separate conjunctions with Regulus, Jupiter then continued westward, and on June 17, 2 BC, it had a spectacular reunion with Venus. His planetary conjunction was visible on Earth west of Babylon. The Magi, who would have been in Mesopotamia, would have witnessed this planetary union appearing in the western horizon, precisely in the direction of Judea. This celestial occurrence prompted Isaac Asimov to ask the question, quote, Is the fact that this unusual star was seen in the direction of Judah enough to make them think of a Messiah? End quote. This heavenly scene could well have prompted the Magi to look towards Jerusalem and not to the celebrations in Rome for the arrival of the Messianic King of the world. It could have been interpreted that these 2 planets, which introduced the prophesied king in their symbolic way when they were both morning stars some 10 months before, were now completing their introduction with an impressively rare evening star union. There had not been anything like this brilliant conjunction for centuries, nor would there be again for many generations. It could well have symbolized to the Magi the closing of one era and the beginning of another era. One thing is certain, since it was written in the book of Genesis 1:14 that the heavenly bodies were accounted for signs, these unusual movements of the stars could not but be interpreted by the Magi as indicating the birth of the Jewish Messiah into the world. Jupiter, the king planet. Let's observe some factors concerning the star of Bethlehem. The account in the New Testament says that the Magi, astrologers, saw the star rising above the eastern horizon, and on August 12, 3 BC, Jupiter rose as a morning star that soon came into conjunction with Venus. This conjunction started Jupiter off on a journey in which 6 conjunctions with other planets in the star Regulus took place. At the end of 2 BC, the planet soon left its massing with the other 3 planets and continued in apparent westward motion each morning, as viewed by the Magi at their regular pre-dawn observations. Now, if the Magi began their own journey towards Jerusalem near this apparent westward motion of Jupiter each day could have indicated to them to proceed in the same westward direction towards Jerusalem. They could have been following Jupiter in the example it was setting. The Bible relates that, quote, the star went ahead of them, end quote, which could well mean that the Magi were led by Jupiter in this symbolic fashion. Upon reaching Jerusalem, the Magi were told to look towards Bethlehem for a newborn king, which happened when the star came to a definite halt in the heavens. It stopped its motion of leading the Magi and stood over where the young child was. The star stood still. Who would have ever heard of a star becoming stationary in the heavens? The account is not as ridiculous as it may seem because it was describing a celestial phenomenon that all astronomers are aware of when a planet is in either retrogression or progression. The stopping, therefore, happened thus. The planet was in its normal movement, called its proper motion, eastward to the fixed stars, but since the Earth moves faster than Jupiter in its orbit around the Sun, an observer would see Jupiter nearly along the same line as the Earth's own orbital movement. So when the Earth is traveling more or less in a direct line towards Jupiter, the planet will continue to show proper motion. But when Earth reaches a position beyond or past Jupiter, point A, and just past point A in the diagram, it is not longer heading towards Jupiter. The faster velocity of the Earth as it makes its curve to point B causes the apparent motion of Jupiter to slow down. This continues until the Earth reaches point C, and it's here that the speed of the Earth in relation to Jupiter is the same as Jupiter's. This is when Jupiter appears to be stationary within the background of the fixed stars, and as the Earth progresses from C to D, it has greater relative speed than Jupiter, and this causes Jupiter to retrogress. The planet reverses its motion and travels westward through the stars. At point D, however, the speed of the Earth and Jupiter are again relative to each other, and Jupiter stops its reverse motion. When D is passed, Jupiter returns to proper motion. This is also what happened when Jupiter came in contact with the star Regulus on 3 different occasions as described above. At the end of 2 BC, Jupiter arrived at its ordinary time for retrogression, but as viewed from Jerusalem on Earth, Jupiter came to its normal stationary position directly over Bethlehem on December 25th, presumably because it's not certain exactly when the child was born and what age he was when the Magi visited him. We're told in the New Testament that the man called Jesus was born of a virgin and precisely on December 25th BC, 2 BC. Jupiter stopped in a position of the constellation of Virgo, right where a woman carries a child in pregnancy, hence in the middle of the constellation. On that day, the king planet stopped its lateral motion through the stars and remained stationary for about 6 days. To an observer on Earth, this would have been very significant since the astrologers looked on the winter solstice period as the beginning or birth of the sun. The star led the Magi westward to Jerusalem. They saw it come to a stop while they were in Jerusalem, and on December 25th, 2 BC, Jupiter would have been seen in a meridian position directly over Bethlehem at an elevation of 68 degrees above the southern horizon. This precise position would show the planet shining directly down on Bethlehem while it was stationary among the stars. The star hanging over Bethlehem pointed out the exact geographical location where he, who would be the future king, was born. Although this period or date had nothing to do with the actual birth of Jesus, it probably was a time when the Magi presented their gifts to him as the newly born king of the Jews. Interestingly, while Jupiter was in this stationary position over Bethlehem, the sun was also standing still. The word solstice means the sun stands still, an event that was celebrated by most people of the East. General observance required that on the 25th of December, the birth of the new sun, S-U-N, should be celebrated, when after the winter solstice the days began to lengthen and the invincible light triumphed again over darkness. The Magi from the East would no doubt have wanted to give gifts to the newborn sun, S-U-N, and in the words of the prophet Malachi, the God of Israel is called the Son of Righteousness, S-U-N. Ilios της δικαιοσύνης in Greek, Ilios meaning sun. Professor Eliade, whom many consider to have been the foremost authority in the past and present religious customs of peoples, has shown that the ancients looked on the dawning of each new year, the solstice period, as symbolic of the inauguration of a new age. The Magi would have been aware of these well-known beliefs, and therefore could have supposed that the child in their midst was the one destined to usher in the new golden age that most people were expecting. The constellation of the cross, constellation of Crux, C-R-U-X. At the time discussed above, the constellation of Crux was visible in the latitude of Jerusalem, situated beneath the feet of the centaur in the constellation of Sagittarius. A king was born into this world that later, according to the perfect will of Creator, declined this position, humbled himself into the excruciating suffering by allowing himself to be crucified on a cross. In this regard, then, we can say that a crossing over occurred from the king star Regulus in the constellation of Leo to the brightest star Crux in the constellation of Crux, which at that time was seen over Jerusalem. This suffering, pain, and the blood of the man who hung on that cross near Jerusalem, dripping into earth, redeemed her from full destruction and saved the world, consisting of all who dwell upon and within her, from utter destruction and death at the end of time. This salvation was meant to bring the humans in their earth incarnation to a remembrance of who they really are and from where did they come. The they referring to their souls of consciousness. In ancient times, around the districts of Egypt and Babylonia, the stars of the Crux were visible low on the horizon, but by the effect of precession due to an oscillating motion of the Earth's axis over the centuries, the cross gradually got shifted out of view well to the south. This in itself can be seen as a prophecy directing the attention of modern-day man to the end of time. Over time, then the stars of Crux became invisible to the Northern Hemisphere astrologers and are currently no longer visible in latitudes higher than the Tropic of Cancer. The stars were rediscovered by European navigators who explored the southern territories in the early 16th century, lying along the Milky Way and surrounded by Centaur Sagittarius on three sides. For these explorers, Crux' vertical bar pointed them southward since, unlike the North Celestial Pole, the South Celestial Pole is not marked by any bright star and is called by some aviators and navigators the South Polar Pit. Crux exists for four main stars that form the typical cross, not an X. In the foot of Crux, we find the star A Crux, an abbreviation for Alpha Cruxis, the brightest star of this constellation. Ptolemy, in his Tetrabiblos, 4 books, Ptolemy recognized the stars of the Crux as part of the constellation Centaurus, where they marked the bottom of the hind legs and were thus denoted as akin to Venus and Jupiter in influence. Ancient identification with the bestial part of Centaurus, half man, half horse, gives the bright star of Crux a similar association with those of Bungula on the hoof of the centaur's right foreleg, linked to the mythological figure of Chiron. He was a centaur, of course, of ancient Greece, according to mythology. So linked to the mythological the figure of Chiron, the star Bungula has, as early as the 2nd century BC, been used by Eratosthenes to signify sacrifice, healing, and the need to be healed. In the Crux, the theme of sacrifice and stoic resilience has been emphasized with heightened ecclesiastical connections. More recent texts denote the influence of Crux as purely Jupiterian and thereby reinforced its identification with the sacred. However, as we shall see in more detail in part 2 of this article, in another video I'll do for you, shadows of the centaur's tail lurk there, portraying the need to let go of the base, the reptilian, ego-driven instincts in exchange for pursuit of fortitude and pure spiritual advancement. J.E. Sirlot, in his Dictionary of Symbols, explores the cross as an ancient symbol of opposing forces that cut across each other, so that it signifies conflict in the antagonisms and crossroads of possibilities of construction and destruction. The 12th brightest star in the heavens, Alpha Cruxus, has taken the place of the king star Regulus, and on earth we could say that the king that was born in Bethlehem, instead of taking up his crown, took up his cross. Instead of taking up his scepter, he used it to point to earth, where he knew even then that much deception will sway and confuse the minds of men, as who would be the true king, not only among the stars of heaven, but of earth and the universe. The word to remember here is crossing over. This is by Kaeli Francisco, Humans Are Free, and it's Creative Commons. I'll leave a link below for you for this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.